If you need me to speak up, just put your something like pointing up or something, and I'll try and project a little bit more. My name is Matthew Robert Peters. I am the Executive Director of the Chesapeake Multicultural Resource Center. I did put together a pretty lengthy, it'll be 90 minutes, conversation for today. It does get dense. We will be going over some pretty dense immigration history, which is pretty much the entire history of the United States. I will be condensing that into about 2 slides, maybe about 5-10 minutes. So it's going to be a little dense, but it's just to kind of get us orientated, thinking about immigration, not just locally, but on a more national scale, historic scale. So we can kind of do some comparison and thinking back and kind of analysis and looking at the big picture, which is our entire history as a country is all based around immigration. And we'll be getting into some personal stories of clients that we've had, so we can share a lot of that with you about real stories here that we work with and see every day in our office. We'll go over all the things we provide to the community, and then we can open it up at the end for general open questions, discussions, anything we would have time for. As I go slide to slide, if you need something clarified or you have a quick question about it, please interrupt. So it can be discussion, but I probably won't address any tangent questions that are going to take me another 15-minute explanation of something till the end. So if you do have a question on a slide on Zoom, you can just write it into the chat, and we have a moderator here that will, as I go to the next slide, will let me know that there's a question about that slide or a clarification is needed. So just a little bit about the presenter today. My background is actually in forest science. So my culture, personal culture, has taken quite some turns with my life experiences that I've chosen. So my first job was with the Forest Service. That's what I was kind of dedicated to. Then I joined the Peace Corps back in 1999, also focusing on forestry and forest science. Was sent to Guatemala, decided to just stay in Guatemala. I ended up living there for 13 years in a very rural jungle part of Guatemala. So part of this story, not really mine, but when we get to the Guatemala section, I will be including some of my story into that first part on my firsthand knowledge about some of the families I know from Guatemala there. And since 2012, since I came back in late 2012, I've been the director of the Chesapeake Multicultural Resource Center. Last year, we did celebrate our 10th year anniversary. It was a wonderful event. I have a little slide about that. But this is also an accumulation of not just my story, dating back years to Guatemala, all of my staff story. Each one of my staff members is an immigrant here in the community. So it's their stories we'll be sharing a lot with. And then the 10 years of the over 7,000 immigrant stories that we've heard in our office. So it's a lot. So I'm going to share with you before we get started just a couple of personal philosophies I have coming into this. So there's obviously our organizational culture, but personal culture is a big part of that. So I'm going to share with you just one Zen Buddhist story that kind of reflects on my personal view when I approach things. This is a story that I see reflected in me. It starts off, there lived an old farmer who had worked in his field for many years. One day, his horse bolted away. His neighbors dropped in to commiserate with him. What awful luck, they said sympathetically to the farmer, who only replied, "We'll see." The next morning, to everyone's surprise, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. "How amazing is that?" they exclaimed in excitement. The old farmer replied, "We'll see." A day later, the farmer's son tried to mount one of these wild horses. He was thrown on the ground and broke his leg. Once more, the tamers came by to express their sympathies for his stroke of bad luck. "We'll see," said the farmer politely. The next day, the village had some visitors, military officers, who had come with the perfect purpose of drafting young men into the army. They passed over the farmer's son, thanks to his broken leg. The neighbors patted the farmer on his back. How lucky he was to not have his son be enlisted in the army. We'll see. The second one is from the beginning of my taking on this role in this community. I have always felt blessed to have a client come put their trust to share their story with me. It's never been the other way around, and none of my staff ever had that, where they're lucky to have us. No, we're lucky to have them, you know. That's our personal philosophy. We exude that, we show that, so we never flip it around where they should be thankful to us for what we provide. No, we are so grateful to them. And that's just a philosophy I have every day going to work. My staff, I know, also have that philosophy. The third one comes from my time in development work in a developing country of Guatemala. There's a book written about Peace Corps, not a very flattering book, but a book that gets to a point nonetheless, titled The Road to Hell. Anyone know how to finish that statement about this book about international work? Not just the Peace Corps, but all. Faith with good intentions. So this is the thing that keeps me up every night when it's, what do you do? I help the community. That sounds wonderful. Is that a good intention? Or do you actually provide a service that gets something done? Because I've seen firsthand in a developing country, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of good intentions to one of the second poorest country in this hemisphere. And we'll get to the first poorest country in this hemisphere as well. And all those good intentions, what? Right? So that's another philosophy I bring every day is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So we're going to start going into our discussion knowing that, yes, starting off, we all have those anecdotal stories. Oh, I know a family from the Ukraine. This is them. This represents all of Ukraine. I know a family from Venezuela. They probably represent all Venezuelans, and that's normal, right? I know someone from Easton. They're nice. They're fishermen. Everyone in Easton must be a fisherman. We do this, right? We collect these anecdotal stories. We have the luxury of having over 7,500 clients. So it's more than just picking one or two. It really is a conglomeration of hearing so many unique individual stories and being able to give some, what we call generalizations. Not stereotypes, not just an anecdotal thing, but just a generalization of things we see in the community, stories we hear, and able to present them to you to get a better feel for what our immigrant community here in Easton and the surrounding counties looks like. So we've worked with 7,500 clients from 65 different nationalities in our office. Just a quick history of our organization, the 10 years or 11 years now. We started as under the Midshore Community Foundation. A group of concerned citizens came together in 2012, had some money to put into the community foundation to start this nonprofit. They hired me in September 2012 to start an after-school program, and we were provided space by the Oasis Covenant Church on Aurora Street. We had a nice little closet that we made into an office. We had a nice little open area for our after-school program, and we got moving. 2013 to 2018, in order to provide stability for our program, I was able to craft a long-term 5-year plan for an after-school program that got federal and state funding. So that was able to sustain our organization, bring in a couple more full-time workers. We had to focus a lot of our efforts and time on the after-school program, but it got us that foot in the door as an organization, to have some legitimacy, start the conversation with other groups, and then to slowly build our reputations with the families we served or the parents of the students that we served. By 2016, we really started to notice some large gaps in the community that we needed to fill. The first being immigration. So we are now an accredited organization through the Department of Justice to provide direct immigration services. And we also have health navigators on staff that can directly assist clients with the oh so easy healthcare systems we have here in the United States, as well as other benefits. 2019, we were able to grow enough as an organization to purchase our new home on Dover Street. Feel free to visit us at any time. It's a wonderful place to meet all of our staff. And at that time, we had 4 full-time staff. Weathering through the pandemic, we were called on for our services a lot. So we were able to double our staff during that time. Now, in 2024, we have 7 full-time staff. We have 2 openings for 2 more full-time staff. And we have expanded greatly into doing outreach services every day in Caroline County, where we've seen our services are greatly needed. All right, any questions just for that quick introduction?
What are your revenue sources?
We'll get to that at the very end when I do my / revenue sources and how you can help slide. So this is going to be a little bit of a dense few slides as we quickly kind of move through what does immigration look like in the United States, or what has it looked like up until today. So this is going to take us pretty much from having really no mention or laws about immigrants or citizens or anything up until our 14th Amendment, which came out of the Civil War, which had to, the first time in our Constitution, actually address who becomes a citizen and how. Up to that time, it's obviously only been white people with property were able to vote and participate. After this, it now included those of African descent, slaves during that time. However, that amendment did not include any provision for any other non-white. So the Native American, Asian, from South America, any other race was not able to find that pathway to become a naturalized citizen, participate. So it was still great, but very limited in scope. Since then, we had just a number of acts that were created by Congress, a lot to exclude and start to put quotas and limits on who can come to this country. The first being due to the economy, the gold rush, the increase of the Asian population in the United States due to the railroad construction, and then the fierce backlash after, once the economy started to go down. Congress enacted the Chinese Exclusion Act, which prohibited any Asians from entering the country at all. So it says Chinese, but it was really extended to any Asian at that time. We then had our first real immigration law, the Immigration Act of 1924, which put a strict limit on how many people could enter the country every year and from which countries. So we can kind of guess, if you look at our own histories, and I got your surveys, what those countries were. Yes, they were all European countries. So this list did not include any other country in the world except European countries at this time, 1924. And this came also as part of the backlash from World War I. So that's what our immigration looks like. Very limited, white only pretty much, European only, up until we had our law that we still follow today, the Immigration Nationality Act of 1965, which was also really due in large part to the Civil Rights Movement. So there it was, wait a second, we are only allowing white Europeans into this country. And after the Civil Rights Movement, obviously, we are not that country anymore. We have changed. We have laws on the book that prohibit this from happening. So we created this act to make it open to all countries. So this was a poll we did looking at some of our members here today in our program. So which continent did your family immigrate from? It was 100% from Europe, and then one person answered Europe and Africa, which makes sense because we look at the next question, when did your family come? Pretty much everyone came before the 1965 Immigration Act, where it was really limited only to Europe. So, makes sense when we look at it in that scope of our actual laws, history, and policy on how immigration was shaped and formed up until 1965. So what did the Immigration Nationality Act of 1965 do? Well, it made it equal for all countries across the globe. So we start to see, this goes from 1960s up until 2022, when we talk about immigration to the United States, it drastically changes. Whereas before that, it was probably 90, 100% from Europe, is now down to less than 10% from Europe.
Can you tell us what the colors mean?
Sure.
Because we can't see it.
So sure, the green would be from the Americas, which primarily is our neighbor, Mexico, but also would include all Latin American countries. The red is from Asia, primarily China, but also Japan, Vietnam. And the purple is Europe. The very small one is Africa, which hasn't changed too much in our history. So we can see how this opened up our immigration policy to include all races, ethnicities, and nationalities, one putting quotas on the number of immigrants that can come into this country. And Congress does still set that quota each and every year of how many immigrants can come into the country. Since then, since 1965, this is still the same 98% of laws that we follow are from the 1965 law. So when they talk about reform, change, probably time for change, since we're still following the same laws from 1965. The world has taken some changes over that time. Our laws probably need to reflect that. The next large act that we signed was the Refugee Act, which comes into play a lot now in our news when we talk about refugees around the world, which set quotas for how many people will take from refugees, how to define asylees and asylum process in 1980. The Immigration Reform and Control Act, which is probably one that had an influence on a number of families here. That was during the Reagan administration, also known for its amnesty, which took the 3 million plus people that were here undocumented, mainly from Mexico, and said, okay, here are your documents. Let's just move on. With the provision that now it's illegal to hire anyone that doesn't have documentation, and now there are very strict border controls and visa controls and everything like that. The last major one after that was TPS and diversity visas, finding ways to also find pathways for people that find themselves here without documents, that have unique stories on why they can't leave the country or why they can't be removed. So TPS was created, a diversity visa to get some people here, and there's a large population that lives here that do rely on TPS, which stands for Temporary Protective Status, as a means to be here with some documentation. The DACA Dreamers, which was very much in the news when the Obama administration declared that. We will talk about that as two of our staff members are Dreamers DACA. So it has a huge impact on the work we do in our community, is that DACA program. Since these, it's been 12 years now, not much or nothing has really happened in terms of immigration policy or laws or anything like that. So taking a look just at the history of immigrants across the nation again, not just locally. This is the percentage, the orange would be the percentage of the entire population that are foreign-born. So it's reached its max of around 15, 16% in the early 1900s. World War II had a drastic effect on immigration here of foreign-born. And we've climbed up back to that historic level of having about 15% of our population being foreign-born. So there's some exaggeration, some panic. Have we been here before as a nation? Yes, obviously times have changed, times are different. And obviously the number is much different because our population is much, much different today.
If this is legal immigrants, does anybody have an idea of the number of illegal immigrants here?
You can tell me what an illegal immigrant
Well-
is, I'd be able to answer.
Yeah, I know.
I'll get to that in a bit. I have 3 illegal immigrants on my staff that are now US citizens, so I don't know. So we'll get to that in a second. So what are our immigration statuses? What constitutes illegal and legal, documented, undocumented? Well, according to our 1965 law, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 statuses. You are either a citizen, meaning you were born in the United States, or you have gone through the naturalization process. That's the first category. Once you're a citizen, you're a citizen. That can't be taken away. Doesn't matter if you're born here. Doesn't matter if you went through the process and got it. Citizen is citizen. The next is your legal status, which we've heard in movies and media is called the green card. The green card is your legal permanent residence. That's permanent. That also cannot be taken away from you. It can, but in very, very select circumstances. You really got to try hard to lose your green card. Okay, so once you have that, that is a permanent status for an immigrant. Then we have a number of different types of non-resident statuses, lots of visas, going to Disneyland, going to a Beyonce concert, coming as a visitor, the work visas, student visas, many of our students in our colleges and universities here and other places. We have religious visas, we have sports visas for the World Cup. We have 44 or some different types of visas that people can apply for to be here on a temporary status in the United States. After that, we have, which is our gray area, not a black and white area by any means, undocumented. Legal, illegal, it's gray, right? All it means is you have no legal status as of yet. Could you tomorrow? Maybe. Could it take 10 years? Maybe. Could it take 40 years? Maybe. I don't know. All we know is at this moment, they would be classified as undocumented as they're in that gray area. So that gray area is most of the clients that we do see here, which, as I mentioned before, would be a temporary protective status. The dreamers that we have, which is no legal status, but it's a way for them to work as Congress figures out a new law on what to do. People coming and looking for asylum are in that gray area, not given asylum yet, but pursuing it. And then now humanitarian program, which was opened up first with the Ukrainians, then Venezuela, now it's extended to Haiti and Nicaragua.
Can the people with a green card or the legal permanent residents, can they vote?
So the question is, can people that have a green card status vote? No. The only people, well, no with an asterisk. Only U.S. citizens can vote. In 3 counties in the United States, I believe one's in Maryland, 2 are in California, people with green cards can participate in a local mayoral election, but not a statewide or a national election. So you'll see some articles talking about people with immigrants voting. Yes, but it's only in 2 or 3 select districts or town areas in the United States. Basically, no, you must be a U.S. citizen in order to vote in our elections.
How are they counted in the census?
So census just asks a number of questions. They'll ask your country of origin sometimes. I don't think they do ask legal status in the census. So again, when we do our census here, there's no way people aren't going to voluntarily say, oh, I'm here without documentation. That's just not going to happen. But they will say maybe I was born in Nicaragua or I was born in Senegal.
How can somebody, you hear all the time in the news that, oh, well, they're flooding into the United States, flooding, literally. and they're able to get health insurance, they're able to get this, or able to get this, or able to get this, they don't get. Is that true or not?
So going on a tangent, kind of. The question is, on the news, it's saying so many people that are entering the country are eligible for all these benefits we have in the United States. The blanket answer is no, that's absolutely false. However, in 1980, we also have another act. I could put so many acts on there from the 1980s. The Cuban Haitian Entry Act,
Correct.
which states, in law, president can't change law. Border Patrol can't change law. They can only enact it. If Congress wants to change it, they can, but on the books, we have the Cuban Haitian Entry Law. So if you are from Cuba or Haiti and you reach our soil, you will be paroled. And according to our law that we wrote and Congress approved, the president approved, the Supreme Court approved in 1980, you are guaranteed all benefits during that parole. So yes.
If so facto, why there's such a concentration of legal voters, Cuban American, Haitian American, in South Florida, correct?
That's a high concentration, yes.
Okay.
Yes. But that's our law. So some, if you're from Cuba or Haiti, yes, you are able to apply and get those benefits. Other countries,
And
no.
they vote.
who votes? Not the people coming in. You have to be a U.S. citizen to vote.
But they were granted citizenship pretty early.
No one's granted citizenship.
Okay.
No one's granted citizenship.
So going back to Kathy's question, the previous slide where you showed 15% of the population as immigrants, does that mean 15% are currently non-citizens,
No, that's foreign born.
foreign born? So
Yeah.
some of them might be citizens, some might be undocumented.
So, yes, they might be citizens, they might be green card holders, they might be in the process of getting a green card. Who knows? But they're foreign born. We're talking foreign born, not born in the United States.
Does that include undocumented?
Yes,
Yes.
So that's just population, you know?
yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes, there's no way for anyone to look at a case and say, right, either or. Because again, in my office, we have cases where they're undocumented, they've been undocumented for 20 years. Next week, they're a permanent resident. So it depends maybe when, but it's hard to pinpoint exactly what that means.
So Matt, this is census data?
That's census data. Correct. All right, so I know it's a lot to take in our history of immigration, but it is to put in context what we are seeing today on the news, what has historically happened, what our countries look like, the things that are influencing and moving global migration. Right? We can look at our history in Europe, what was driving that, lots of different factors. Has that changed much, the factors? No. Same factors, just different times in different countries.
So how would you characterize what's going on at the border right now?
How would I? Normal human migration. The same migration we saw in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. People move for opportunity.
So that's going back to, it hasn't been that massive, or has it been,
Oh, yeah.
has that massive migration
Oh, yeah.
been as massive in our history
Yes.
as it is right now?
Absolutely, yes. There have been waves, yes.
When?
So the 1600s was probably one of the largest ones.
And then from,
Just everyone that came to the United States or from Europe, that was a new person coming. Everyone. 100% were foreign born for a long period of time. Right? It took a long time before people started actually being born here on US soil. Then from then we had the huge expansion in the 1800s. People from Asia, Mexico, we'll get to the Mexican slide. Half of America was Mexico at one point. So when you change the map, you've already included now a huge number of people that are now foreign born, which a year ago were born in their own country of Mexico.
but isn't there a huge migration going on all over the world right now?
Correct.
Because of climate and because of wars and everything. It's a massive migration.
Yes, but that has always occurred. Humans have always migrated around the world
Where does-
since the dawn of time. I should, it's going on a take. So, when we look at our community here, it's tough not to just look at one factor when we say culture. So culture, a lot of people will associate immediately with your race or your ethnicity, Hispanic, not Hispanic, or your language. Which language do you speak? And that's your culture. Or your nationality. I'm from France. Oh, you're just like every other French person. Well, yes. Or you're American. You're like every American. Yes and no. Complicated. Shouldn't be, but it is. So when we are at the Multicultural Center and we see a client, sure, it's important to us, it's important to clients to see race and understand it. Also ethnicity, religion, your age, very different working with a 19-year-old and an 88-year-old coming into our office with the same issues. Yes, we've had someone, an 88-year-old, come up through the border last week. We took her case and started working on it. We had a 19-year-old come in yesterday crossing. So, are they from the same country? Yes. Does that make them the same? Kind of. Culture is a lot of things. Parents, sexual orientation, life experiences, economic level. Did you grow up in an urban area? Did you grow up on a farm? So many things make up a person's culture. So even though when we talk and we start looking at countries people come from, foreign born in America, that gives us a little bit of insight into culture. But always remember, culture is so much more when we have a client or someone that we work with. So we will be getting into nationalities we work with, but within those, there is so much rich and deep and unique culture with every one of our clients. So looking at our 7,500 clients we've worked with here in our region, so this includes the mid-shore counties as well as Delaware. Delaware is now our third largest community we serve, after Talbot County and Caroline County. 43% of the clients we see are from Guatemala, followed by 18% of the clients we see are from Haiti. Mexico, 12%, Honduras, 10%, El Salvador, 6%, Venezuela, 4%, Pakistan, 1%, and then those other 58 countries fall into others. So we've seen lots of different countries, but most of the clients we see every day are primarily from one of these. So I can with confidence say today, we will have in our office here in Easton, someone from Guatemala, someone from Haiti, someone from Mexico, Honduras, Salvador, Venezuela, asking for our services. So that is what the makeup of our community looks like here of our immigrant community. Even though we've served so many clients from a number of countries for a number of reasons. So can anyone explain then, a quick question, in all of our census data, all of our government forms, going to the MBA, when you enroll in school, they ask you, are you Hispanic/Latino? What's the difference between Hispanic and Latino?
Hispanic are from Spain.
Okay, it might be. Anyone else? We ask it every day. Every one of us gets that question. Do we understand it? Do we know if you're Hispanic/Latino? Do we feel it?
Latino, South American?
South American? Or Spain? Latin American?
Is it just a personal preference of the person of how they want to be identified?
So yes to everything, pretty much. The bottom line is, who gets to decide that? Not me. The person being asked gets to answer that question. Wikipedia, however, has its definition. Right? So Latino would be the geographical from Latin America, which includes Mexico, the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. And Hispanic would be from Spanish culture, something based in Spanish culture. Does it mean you have to speak Spanish to be Hispanic? I sure hope not, because a lot of people I know here say they're Hispanic, and their family's Hispanic, but they don't speak much Spanish. I speak a lot of Spanish, I'm not Hispanic. So it's the cultural thing, the whole conglomerate, something influenced from the Spanish colonization of the Americas. So we do ask this question of our students, and we didn't start asking it until the year 2001. So before 2001, all our schools and hospitals tracked was, are you black or are you white? All right, things have changed a lot because of our Nationality Act from 1965. Our demographics started to change. So we started to ask that question in 2001. So we look at Talbot County would be the dark line, followed by Caroline County, Queen Anne's County, and Dorchester. This is for the whole county population, asking this question. So in Talbot County in 2001, I think we had maybe about 89 students that identified as Hispanic. And we see that change in our demographics here to where it was about, 580 when we started as an organization. And today it's now around over 1,200 students in Talbot County identify as Hispanic or Latino. And we can see the same trend for Caroline County, a little slightly lower for Queen Anne's, and then even lower for Dorchester. But there is a trend of our demographics here changing at our student population level, which is a reflection of our adult population because most of these kids, if not all, have parents or guardians that live here. So this is comes from Talbot County Public School data, Maryland report card, to see how our demographics change from county to county and school to school. So we are primarily Easton Elementary. So when we started our first report in 2012, we were right about 20% of the student body at Easton Elementary, which is the second largest elementary school in all of Maryland. Big student population there. Yeah, so it's a good group of students. 20% identified as Hispanic. So when we started our program, there was a need there. There was obviously a language need, a cultural need to attend to 20% of that population. Question?
Yeah, you had talked earlier about, it was like Cubans and Haitians under that act, were entitled to benefits, full benefits in the United States.
For 1 to 2 years.
For 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
But, and here you're talking about student population. Are there any restrictions as far as the children that are currently living in this country, whether they are legal or not documented, as far as they're going to school?
No, that was a law created by Reagan with the Amnesty Act that stated two things. And Supreme Court also ruled on it. No public school can deny any child an education based on nationality, ethnicity, race, language, period. Nor can a hospital, right?
Or status?
Regardless, if you are here in this country and you need services from a hospital, you are guaranteed by our laws to receive them, as well as public school education. So now, benefits, U.S. citizens are entitled to benefits. But if you're not a U.S. citizen, no, and that goes for children as well. You are not guaranteed health insurance. You are not guaranteed food or food benefits. So many of our children don't have health insurance or any type of benefits to get food.
What's the difference when you see people between an immigrant and a refugee?
I don't know. I mean, immigrant's an immigrant. You're foreign-born.
What's a refugee?
Foreign-born.
So what?
I mean, there's different life
Are
experiences.
they interchangeable?
One might be a billionaire like Elon Musk from South Africa, and one might be someone fleeing the war in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
So it's a life experience more, it's a difference.
Okay, so that's my, but the other thing is, do you see many political refugees, people that are leaving their country for political reasons.
Yes, we do. So we take a look at this trend. So right now, East Elementary is at 45% Hispanic. So almost half of our students have the stories we'll be telling in about a minute behind them as part of their culture. Very different from our culture. Very different from our immigration stories that we have with our families. And we see that now with coming into the middle school, high school. So we're pretty much now at, for our high school, a third of all the students graduating from here on out will be coming from one of these immigrant stories I'll be telling you. Another question?
Why is the high school count and the east and middle school count so much lower? What happens?
Time.
Oh, okay, so it's not they're dropping out or going.
You're not born at age 10.
Right.
You're born at age 0. So it takes time to get there.
Get to high school.
But that's all it's time. Those will even out over time. So the question everyone asks, the why. I don't ask why to my clients. I don't need to. I know the stories. I hear the stories. I can fill in the why for myself. I don't need to ask my client, why are you here? Not something we do. But we see a clear cause and effect from our history of immigration for lots of different reasons. So I have this drop. Something happens, COVID. How does COVID affect Venezuela? How does COVID affect Mexico and Guatemala? The same here? Different? More intense? What's the cause and effect of any significant event? A hurricane? The Vietnam War? How many refugees did we let in between 1975 and 1980? And why? Was that our responsibility? Should we have done that? We did. It was millions of refugees. So we talked about the numbers. Look at the numbers from that significant event, the Vietnam War, and how that had influenced people coming here. We look at Afghanistan. That's not in the news, unfortunately, but it's still part of what we see. The ramifications of that are still seen in my office every day with the Afghani refugees I have in my office looking for the path forward. And the Ukraine. Disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes. We have TPS, the earthquake in Salvador, the hurricane in Honduras. A lot of people are still here because their towns are still wiped off the map. They have not been built back up. They have no home to go back to. It's gone. All of their property is gone. So how do we send them back knowing that? We created a TPS program. Love and marriage happens. Well, I want my mom to be with me. She lives in Italy. My mom's going to come here now and be with us. Or I got married to a wonderful woman in the Philippines. She's going to come be with you. Those events happen, the cause and effect for the immigration. Big one's the economy. We live in the richest country in the world, hands down. Nothing compares to the superpower that is the United States. Nothing, not even close. Why on earth would you come to a country that's a superpower? It's the only place to get that opportunity if you're struggling economically, and a lot of people are. Recessions hit hard here, 10 times harder in Guatemala and Haiti. COVID hit hard here, 10 times harder. The embargoes we put on countries, we think we're punishing the government. Yeah. Who takes the real hit? Those people that now have nothing to sell their goods to or how to get that income. Climate change, inflation. Oh, it's so expensive to buy a Coca-Cola now. How expensive do you think it is in Nicaragua or Honduras? 10 times more expensive there. It accumulates that pain. So that's cause and effect of why we see what we see every day, because we have this cause and effect every day for different reasons. So we get into some of the stories of our community members here. Some are very specific with names. Some are generalizations, no names. I'm just putting a story and a made-up name there. But when I talk, I stay clear of the stereotypes. So you'll never hear me say something is based on my opinion, not on a fact, suggest everyone from rural Guatemala is the same or everyone from Mexico is the same, nothing like that. Because they always come out derogative or negative. But we do need to do talking in generalizations based on facts, based on research, assessments, not a personal opinion. And the intent is to educate us about what do we hear in our office, what do these families tell us, what do we see going on. So the first one, the one closest and dearest to me, is a story about Guatemala. That's my story, that's me, back in 1999. This is the town I lived in. Houses still look like this. Town and village, hasn't changed much. Very tough history if you know about it. Very close to us. There was Mexico, and we'll focus on one of our huge success stories, Ingrid, many of you know, who shared her story at our event last year. But before I go into that, I'm just going to read some statistics today for the why, the cause and effect, of why we have so many in this community from Guatemala. So Guatemala has a population of 17 million and is about the size of Tennessee. More than half of the Guatemalan population is indigenous or Native American, and that unequally impacts this population. Despite being the largest economy in Central America, Guatemala has the lowest human development index of any country, except for one, we'll get to that one next, in the entire hemisphere. 56 to 64 population lives below the poverty level of $2 a day. That's today, not yesterday, it's not 100 years ago. This is today's statistics. That percentage rises to over 75% when you're rural Guatemala. 50% live in inadequate housing. Over 1.5 million homes are made of corn stalks or scavenged material that they just find laying around. Public spending on education is the lowest in all of this hemisphere at 2%. Nearly no schools have books, highest rates of child labor in the world. Average Guatemalan child will be in school for 3 years. Literacy rate is 70%, but when you go to rural Guatemala, it's about 20%. So Guatemala has the lowest tax collection of any country in Central America. The wealthiest 1% of Guatemalans own 70% of the wealth. The top 5% own 90%. So keep those in mind when we go into the why about Guatemala. But it's historically underdeveloped, very rough history with the Cold War. During the Cold War, they elected a social democratic government consisting of 3 people, which was ousted by a military-backed coup backed by the United States, which sparked a 36-year civil war in Guatemala that we don't talk about. You don't talk about it there. We don't talk about with our history because it's not good. I got there right when the war ended. So Reconstruction was in place when I got there in 1999. So the first roads to my community where I live were being built. The first expansion, first electricity. When I first lived in my town, no running water. So I started to see running water. So it was a Reconstruction time. But then I also saw the next stage of that in 2011, which forced me out of my village, was the prominence of the drug cartels taking over almost every aspect of Central American life, which created Guatemala to be the most violent country in the world from 2012 to 2015. So some of the stories I'll share. The first one is Hector's story. Hector is a man I knew in my town. So understanding that this is a very rural jungle community, no roads. We got our first road being built. He makes the decision, I'm going to head to the United States to send money back, take care of my 2 children and my wife. I'm going to have them buy a store. He took a loan out on all his land he had to get money to pay the coyotes to get up here. He ended up living in Arlington, Virginia, which was one of the hubs of the town we were in. There's a hub in Los Angeles, Huntsville, Alabama, and Arlington, Virginia. He actually worked for a cleaning company that went into the Pentagon and cleaned the Pentagon every night. He sent money back, and I was there with his children in the town, saw his wife build a house there with that money, bought a store, got their kids an education. The recession hit in 2008, 2009. He was laid off of his work for cleaning. One day when he was driving out in a borrowed car to try and find other work, he was stopped for not having a license, arrested, immigration came, and they deported him. So he came back to our town in 2010, but he had a store built. He had his kids in school. He had a little business that he was running, right? So that Will C story kind of fits in there, where he came back kind of on a good foot after spending that time here, sending that money back home. Today, 2023, that money being sent back home is called a remittance. In Spanish, it's called remesa. Last year, it was over $20 billion were sent from the United States from workers to their families in Guatemala. So how do you get around that 5% of the super rich owning 90% of the wealth? This is one way, and it works. This is the only way to get money into the hands of your kids and mother and father and families back in Guatemala. You go get the money and you send it back home. Hector's story is one of the only successes. He had that, I'm only going to be in the United States for 5 or 6 years. I don't want to be away that long from my family. By 2004, 25% of the population between 18 and 30 in my town left for the United States. 25%. Mothers, fathers, uncles, all that. How many came back? As far as I know, just Hector. His story was he was able to get something created and established. The others haven't gotten to that point yet, but they can come back and live a sustainable life back in their hometown with their family. Which leads to the next story, which is Ingrid's story. So Ingrid grew up in rural, very rural Guatemala. Her father worked in coffee fields, sometimes good, most of the time bad. So in 2008, her older brother made its way to the United States and started sending money back so Ingrid could go to school. And she did. However, it just wasn't enough. Violence was overtaking these communities. Her father couldn't find any more work. So the decision was, when she was 15 years old, sent her on her own to come to the United States. And if you remember the news at that time, another wave, another panic. So in 2014-15, this was all the news. It was new. We didn't really know how to deal with it. So it wasn't just Ingrid's story. So we started housing them in prisons, cages. We remember those stories, right? Then we started to kind of develop, well, what do we do? So Ingrid was released in custody of her brother, came to our office. Talbot County High School, Easton High School, gave us a small grant so we could do a project. That year alone, we had 60 unaccompanied minors in our school here. So we did a program. Ingrid took to it very quickly, started really learning English. A couple of our board members worked with her. She graduated, got connected to a good lawyer. Her brother worked hard, paid that lawyer. She was able to get her green card, and in 2021, she became a U.S. citizen. So now she works for us. So it's a story about undocumented people coming to the border. Yes, they take twists and turns. And we can come to Maria's story, which could be yesterday, which it really is. I'm going to base it on yesterday's story, or 2019 or 2018. 2019 is particularly because she came up in what we call the caravans. Well, what happened to those caravans? Nothing. They exist every day. They always have, probably always will. the human migration, especially through Central America. The caravan is a way to avoid being kidnapped and captured by the cartels. She came up in 2018-19 through a caravan. At that time at the border, there was really no clear policy on what to do. So, like the over 500,000 cases during that time in 2018 and early 2019, those cases have just disappeared. So she's been waiting here for her court date to defend her case to be here for asylum. That court date will probably never be set because they mismanaged and mishandled over 500,000 cases at the border last year. So she just was in waiting. She has 2 children here, born in the United States now. She's doing the best she can. We're just waiting for that court date, which may or may never come, so she can actually fight her case to stay here. So each day with her is a success, each day is a struggle with Maria.
I just have a question about Hector. Did he ever get bothered by the drug cartel?
In Guatemala, we're all bothered by the drug cartels. So the mayor he worked for was the first person in our community kidnapped and killed. That was in 2012. And he was at that time then the vice mayor of our county. So yeah, we're all affected, heavily affected. We're gonna move to, I read those statistics about Guatemala, make them a lot worse, and you now have the statistics for Haiti, which is our second biggest population we work with here on the Eastern Shore. The largest minority group in Salisbury at the moment, and also makes up 80% of the workforce for all of our chicken farms.
Okay.
So when you have dinner tonight, part of this story. So we're going to work with Oberta. Bertha, young woman, married, lived on the outskirts of Port-au-Prince with her husband and 4 young children. She's trying to make it happen. Devastating earthquake happened in 2010, destroying most everything they had. So the husband, dad, leaves for Brazil, which is hiring hundreds of thousands of Haitians to come and work on the World Cup and the Olympics. So he gets on a boat that's provided by Brazil, gets down there and starts working day and night in construction, building everything from hotels to roads to stadiums, getting in preparation for the World Cup and the Olympics. Alberta's at home trying to do her best. Can't make ends meet. So the husband's like, I can get you a job here, cleaning and working in hotels and everything as we're getting ready for the World Cup. So she gets on the next boat, goes and meets with her. They have a daughter born in Brazil. 2016, and in about August, the last day of the Olympics, they pull out bulldozers and start bulldozing down all of the migrant camps for the workers, forcing them out of the country. Alberta's pregnant, has her young daughter with her, about 3 years old. Husband, they just start making their way to the United States. And she gets to my office in 2016. We've been working with her ever since. Last year, her other children that were left behind in Haiti, things have gotten much worse since the assassination of the president there. The gangs have taken control of her entire neighborhood. So she gets them out of there, and they come up as the unaccompanied minors, like Ingrid, last year, and we helped them with that case. And then just 2 weeks ago, her oldest children came in with that humanitarian parole that's now being offered to Haiti. So finally, that family is together here in Federalsburg and doing very well with having TPS right now and both working to provide for the family.
How are the Haitians entering the country? Are they entering through Mexico or some other means?
Haitians right now are mainly entering through Mexico, but there are still occasionally the boats that hit Florida. But that's very dangerous, much more dangerous than working your way, mainly through Brazil, and then working your way up from Brazil up into Mexico to the United States. So, you can look this up in the news, Olympics over, Haitian workers are leaving Brazil, forced out, depends on which article you read. So we do have the Cuban Haitian Entry Act of 1980. TPS was granted to Haitians because of the devastating earthquake in 2010. 2016, Brazil evacuates camps. This is a little tangent story here. So with this story in the news, unprecedented amount of Haitians at the border, the president at that time, I won't go naming presidents because we're not going to go political in this conversation here, he enacts a policy to expedite removal of all Haitians at the border. Just don't give them any due process, deport them immediately back to Haiti. That was September 15th, so it was chaos. Everyone expecting their family member to come up, be with them, or being deported in mass numbers. October 4th, about 2 weeks later after this, the devastating hurricane just wipes out half of Haiti. There's no airport. There's no way to get a plane into Haiti. All deportations have to be halted. That policy is still there, but it's just not talked about. 2021, 3 years ago, the president was assassinated. The entire country in chaos. Gangs have taken over. So we now have another TPS, temporary protective status, for the Haitians based on that. And what comes next, we'll see. Does battery go bad?
I hope not.
Maybe.
I just turned it on, yeah, here.
Okay.
I got you.
Our third biggest group from Mexico. Mexico is our American story. We can't really divide it. If you didn't know from your American history, this is Mexico. Everything from Texas to California, for a long time, many generations, was Mexico, not the United States. It wasn't the United States until 1848. So our history with Mexico is very different, obviously, than any other country in terms of immigration and immigrants. There are still people whose grandparents and great-grandparents were born in Colorado that are declared undocumented today. Still. Crazy world we live in, but it's the world we live in.
I'll just do it.
So we've had, since 1965, just a back and forth policy, trying to patch things together to make it work with Mexico, considering our history. With the 1965, we wanted to make all things equal across all countries. The loser in this is Mexico, because they have to have the longest wait time for any family reunification. Right now, if you are a citizen here in this country and you want your older child, 20 years old, to come and be with you from Mexico, it's a 24-year wait for that visa. So your child's 20 years old, you won't get to see them here in the US until they're over 40 years old. How many? Is that a good policy for our neighbors? No, but that's what it is. If your child's married, 26-year wait. If you want your brother to come or your sister to come be with you, it's a 24-year wait, just for Mexico. Right? So, why does people come without a document? Because can you really wait 24 years? Is that possible? Do you want to? I don't know. It's tough. It's not so clear. Which really that led to this Amnesty Act of 1980. Well, I think that's wrong. 1986. Wrong number. 1986 with the Amnesty Act, where they just cleared the table. You got $50? Come here. $50, sign. Here's your green card. Done. You are now a permanent resident. What did you have to do? Pay $50 and sign. So it took the 3 million undocumented, mainly 95% from Mexico, because of our history. They might even have been born here, or their grandparents, but they're undocumented, and just wiped it clean. So we do have some community members here that were around in 1986, not having any documentation. The new policy was just come get your green card. You're now a permanent resident. Took it from 3 million to 0 in about 3 weeks. That's how long it took that process in 1986. That's government working, right? Getting something done in 3 weeks.
What is the wait time due to?
The wait time is due to numbers. So, anyone want to guess, in 2023, green cards, which there's a limited amount every year, I think it's like 1.2 million a year, no more, are given out. You want to take a guess at what are the top 5 countries to get a green card in 2023? Number 1, Mexico. Number 2 in 2023 for people getting green cards? Number 2, India. Number 3, China. Number 4, Cuba. Number 5, Dominican Republic. So how has that changed in 24 years? Turn the dial back 24 years. Look at the same report that immigration provides every year about number of green cards given out. 1999, number 1 was Mexico. Number 2 was China. Number 3 was the Philippines. 4, India. And number 5, Vietnam. So those 5 countries traditionally represent 40 to 50% of all immigrants in the country. So another thing, the cause and effect of all that is we have airlines now. How do most immigrants enter the country? Through the border at Mexico? It's a fraction. It's a fraction of the number of immigrants that enter every day through our airports. So that has a cause and effect. Being able to get here from China used to take maybe 4 months on a boat. Now it takes 12 hours on a plane. So there's a huge cause and effect there on how we deal with immigrants. So because of that law, we have a set number. So Mexico hits their number within a week. Everyone else, you're on the waiting list. Next year, we got 28,000 green cards from Mexico. Within day 1, filled. Everyone else, wait.
Is it a lottery?
No, you have to wait for a visa. Each country gets an allocated amount of visas. Each country.
So are the Chinese who are coming in, are they getting a visa or are they coming over as a visitor and not leaving?
Visitor, worker, all types of different visas that people can come in on. We're seeing now, I got 2 this week that came up through the border. So it's changing. But yeah, do Europeans need a visa to enter the country? Nope. It's called the Visa Waiver Program. They do not.
Unless they've been to Iran on an education.
True. There are some caveats
We have
about
family who's done 2 years to get a visa to visit us from Italy and Switzerland.
Sure. So if you have some history of visiting North Korea or Iran or Cuba, you're probably going to be on a special list in our airports. But regardless, they come in on a visa, typically. Might honor that visa, study here, and then go back. Some just end up staying here and finding that path to become a permanent resident. We can go back. One more. So the stories with our Mexican workers, the big one is the H-2B visas. 70% of H-2B visas, if you ever read about immigration on Eastern Shore, you're going to hear about H-2B visas. Andy Harris talks about them all the time, trying to get more of them, because 70% of the visas are given to Mexicans. Here on the Eastern Shore, 99% of the workers in our crab industry and seafood industry come from Mexico on the H-2B visas.
Aren't they temporary visas? I mean, because I know hotels in Las Vegas, a lot of the people don't realize that a lot of, hotels don't have workers, and they are, H-2B visas are just backed up. I mean, big businesses want a lot more H-2B visas. Is that correct?
So so it's a Mexican story because most of those go to Mexicans. A lot of our Mexican families here just stayed after their visa and lived here, because I have had families that have done this, come here every year for 29 years working in the crab industry. And they felt like, I just don't want to travel anymore. I'm just going to stay here after 29 years. I'm like, that sounds reasonable. The dreamers we talked about, I have 2 dreamers on my staff. Jackie, who came to the United States on a tourist visa way back in 2006. to come visit her mom, who was here not documented. Stayed, went through her entire education here. 2013, when she was 19 years old, was given Dreamer status. And we brought her on our staff last year, and she is now the #1 specialist for all benefits in Maryland. She gets the highest number of calls from across the state, called upon every day by our government officials to truly understand the benefit process with immigrant families. She's become the expert in that field. 80% of all the Dreamers in America are from Mexico. So when we talk about the DACA Dreamer program in 2012, mainly our Mexican families are affected by that. So we go back to the why they come to America. Opportunity is what I hear over and over again. Saw my picture there in Guatemala, looking at some of these situations in Guatemala. Hunger, starvation, children dying from starvation. My only solution, move north, please. Save your family, get them food, because there's no opportunity here. Zero. You need to go find that opportunity. That 5-year economic plan for so many is now a 24-year economic plan. So many of our parents have not seen their parents for 20 years. They keep thinking every year they hear immigration reform. Oh, there'll be an opportunity, immigration reform. No. And that affects a family a lot when you're not able to see grandma or grandpa because of immigration statuses. Participation in a modern society. You want your child to go to school in Guatemala, where 3% of the student population in high school can pass a basic literacy test, where only 20% of the teachers can pass a literacy test. There's no resources there. 2% of its GDP is dedicated to education, the lowest in the world. That's the modern society you want to participate in? No, I want an education. I want safety. I want to be in a modern society. Who wouldn't want that opportunity? You're not getting it in a lot of these countries, and you never will at this rate. Got to go find that opportunity. The basic needs. You can't feed yourself. You're being extorted by gangs. Violence is all around you. You've lost family members to it. Or you just want to be with your dad again or your mom again. So all these factors, we feel on some scale for that one.
Can't those grandparents that you're talking about, couldn't they just come over on a tourist visa?
No.
Not allowed to?
The approval rate for tourist visas is based on income.
Based on what?
Income. So at the U.S. Embassy in Guatemala, you will need to show you have probably make between $20,000 to $80,000 a year to even be considered. Yeah, you need to be in the upper echelons. If you are making, you're part of that 5%, you have visas for every country for life, period. You can go anywhere you want if you're in that 5%. It's pay to play. If you don't have the economic wealth, you're not even considered. You can pay the interview fee, which is now $200. The interview lasts, on average, 1 minute and 30 seconds. In that minute and 30 seconds, they have determined yes or no. 90% no, every day, for one. They have to approve 10 by law. So you might fall into that day where they just got to get rid of these visas by law. You might fall into that and by luck get one, but most of our grandparents have gone and tried. I had a grandmother that's tried 28 times, and she'll keep trying every year because she won't give up, and she might get it. She just might get it. So it's not that easy to get a tourist visa from Guatemala or Haiti or Nicaragua or Honduras and come to the United States. So why the Eastern Shore, I know is the question. What do we got going here? Easton, Talbot County, Dorchester County, Caroline County. So just taking a look at our Guatemala. I say Guatemala. Guatemala has 22 completely different spoken languages. Not one language could be understood by the other, not even a single word. I tried yesterday. Yesterday I had a family that spoke Hmong. Quickly identified that Spanish was not their first language. So I asked, is that Hmong you're speaking? They said, yeah, it's Hmong. I said, can I ask you some questions? Because I speak a little bit of Quechua. I just want to see if they understood some basic words like water, food, corn, name. They were completely different, the two languages there. So even when we talk about Guatemala, it's very culturally diverse. The richest people in this world I know are from Guatemala. The poorest people I know in this world are from Guatemala. Some of the smartest people, Guatemala. Some of the least educated from Guatemala. So it's very diverse. I also know a lot more Guatemalans than Americans, so my story is a little different, but it's very diverse. So a big one is shared culture. I said 43% of our clients come from Guatemala. 90% of our Guatemalans come from either Tacaná, San Marcos, which is right here, or Cuenco, Huehuetenango, which is up here. 90% come from those two towns. Big towns, but 90% come. Do they all know each other? You know everybody in Easton? When you're traveling and you're in California and you're like, oh, this family's from Maryland. Like, okay, why don't you sit with them? Right? Sure. We can talk about the Orioles and the Ravens, right? Do I know them? I don't know them. Just because they're from Maryland, I'm from Maryland, you're putting us in the same room? Okay. Maybe I choose that because I want to talk about the Ravens or the Orioles. Same thing. If you're in a faraway land, you don't know anybody, you meet someone that says, I grew up in Easton. You might be like, oh, can I sit here with you today? Sure. Same thing. You actually know what Tacaná means? Yeah. My family grew up around Tacaná. Oh, well, please. You need a place to stay? Here. You need some food? Here. You need some advice, some help? It's a shared culture. So incredibly important. Because if you were from Tacaná and you came to where I was, they wouldn't talk to you at all. They wouldn't know what to do with you. Be like you're from another world. You might both be from Guatemala, but the cultures are completely different, distinct. So coming here, being able to identify with that shared culture is a huge security feature.
I just wanted to throw in, I taught middle school in Caroline County and had lots of Guatemalan students. And that was so strange for us because you could get 3 kids on the same day and they could have been from completely different towns and they spoke different languages and none of them may have spoken Spanish. So when we had Mexican students, it was real easy to translate everything and Google Translate, and these kids, many of them didn't know how to read. They'd never been in school before. The whole culture of school was foreign to them. And we hand them a laptop. They're like, what's this?
Oh, they know what to do with a laptop.
Yeah.
You can put games on there, that's universal.
Oh, yes. I tell you guys coming to our school was one of the most valuable things I've ever had.
We talked about the family connections, the opportunities here really do match the skill sets in Guatemala. You want good agricultural workers, you're gonna get the best. Construction workers, landscapers, cleaners, people taking care of you, cooking for your grandma, cooking for your neighbors, helping you, cooking in restaurants. I mean, we've seen it, we know it. It is a huge part of our economy here. It's this population. So the sensitivity part, which is very important for us, the whole culture part, I asked this question to you. Where'd you get your name from? Names are so important to us. It might not be to the client, and that's okay. We look at the responses here. Where'd you get your name from? It's a family name. The religious significance, cultural, I have no idea. Other. That lines up exactly with our clients as well. Very similar culture-wise on where names come from. But as you know in schools, when I go to a classroom and they can't pronounce that child's name right, man, does that hurt me. Not as much as it hurts that child or that family, but it hurts me. If you can't take the time, just understand a person's name or ask about it or learn about it. Well, you might not be perfect in pronouncing it, but you're understanding its cultural significance. It's more than just some letters put together. People coming to our office, asking for help. How many of you would ask for help? Not many. Right? Never? Only as the complete last resort would I go to the government or to an organization and ask you for help. No different. No different from who I see every day. It's tough for them to even enter that door and show weakness. They show one sign of weakness in their world. That's it for them. They know that. So for them to actually come in the door and open up and show that weakness, that's tough. So we know that each and every time they sit across from us, this is not easy. This is the toughest thing they've had to do probably, just come and ask for help or tell somebody, I'm undocumented. I don't know what to do. Right? Each family that we see, just different stages, we don't know. We have the right. Survivors, clearly surviving in their home country, coming here doesn't change it. You are just surviving. We do not know what that means. I do not know what that means. I have never had to survive. Ever. Ever. I could play survivor. I did in Guatemala when I lived in a tent or out in the woods, out in the jungle. I played survivor. It's fun to watch on TV. I've never had to actually survive in my life. Right? So it's tough for me to get there, but I know it's there. The learners, okay, coming in with the question, how do I get my child into a soccer team? Oh, all right, let's learn about how to do that. Let's get there. Connectors in the community, my staff, everyone started, most of them started here, right? They're here now. They're an amazing connector to this community. Utilize them at all costs. Use them. Call on them. They have the expertise. They have the lived, shared experience. They were there. They know what they're talking about, how to get others connected. So our demand. Woo. Looking back, life was nice and easy. We are at 7,410 clients. Last year alone, we grew by 1,300 clients. Hit that per day. That's a lot of new people we're seeing. Now, is it because it's a huge change? Maybe. I think it's because we have gotten so good at what we do. We don't mess around. We have no good intentions. We just get it done. What do you need? What do you hear? I don't know how to pay this. We got it. What do I have to do? Nothing. You already did it. It's taken care of. I don't know how to renew this green card. It's done. What do I have to do? Nothing. I just did it. Oh, it's that easy? The lawyer was going to charge me $2,000 for that. I'm like, they were. I just got you renewed for free. Why? Because you got to get back to work. You got to get back to your family. You got back to work. So that mentality, that philosophy is what's really driving people coming to us. So yesterday was 6 people from Dover I had, people coming in from Virginia now, Pennsylvania. And it's not because we're the only one. What is that? No, it's because we're actually good at what we do. Was I good at this time? Could I even do immigration work here? Nope. All I can do is refer you to somebody. But now we've taken kind of charge, initiative, and we're able to really kind of provide a lot of these services. And that's due to our staff. So our staff comes from our community. Estella, you haven't met her, our assistant director, unaccompanied minor. She never got her papers, graduated from Easton High, undocumented, worked in the cleaning industry on her own for about 12 years, was granted DACA. In 2013, I brought her on to do a Girl Scout program at the school. She excelled at it. When we became an accredited organization, one of my top attorneys who was on our board looked at every single page of her entire history of immigration, found a loophole in one little document, And as an organization, we were able to sponsor her and get her green card. She'll be applying for citizenship next year. So her experience really counts in helping the community. Victoria, if you haven't met, is just the most incredible person in the world. Been here 7 years, came from Mexico. Jennifer, she's an American, but her family is from Guatemala and Salvador. Currently undocumented, but I just did all the paperwork to get her mom a green card. So I'm hoping next month her mom is finally, after 30 years living here, a legal resident. And she has 7 kids. So it's an amazing family. Jennifer's the oldest. If you want to talk about why you never use a child to help or a child to interpret, just ask Jennifer. That's her whole life. She's been put in that position to do everything for her family. And it's not good. And she'll be the first one to tell you, don't do it. Because that happened to me and I don't want it to happen to other children. We know Ingrid's story from Guatemala, Jackie Alous from Haiti. On our after-school staff, we have 2 members from the Pakistani community. We work very closely with the Vietnamese community. I was just in Vietnam last year, spending time with the family there. So we have an amazing staff. Talk about success stories. I know that was one of the questions we got. I mean, there are a number of success stories, but everyone except for me, you can Photoshop me out. Just an amazing immigrant story. And some are still in process. Half are still. We'll see. You know, Jackie says, what happens if they end DACA tomorrow? Which could happen. I said, you know, well, we got you, don't worry. How many languages can you speak fluently? Most everyone here said 1, and you know what? That's okay. That's just fine. No one's requiring you to speak more languages. It's okay. So we let our clients know that too. Right? You speak Vietnamese, that's fine. We got it. You don't worry about that. We got it. Speaking Spanish, Haitian Creole, we got it. It's okay if you fall in, this is your 75% of I just can only speak 1 language. If you speak 2, great. More than 2, amazing. I'm trying to learn a 3rd language now. It's nearly impossible. Immigration services, interpretation, health insurance, these are all the direct services we get done in-house through our staff. Services by year continue to grow. We still have 5 more months to go, and we're already matching all of last year's numbers. Most of the work is done for immigration. I did about 1,200 work card applications alone last year, getting people employed and into the workforce. We do the after-school program still. We have a scholarship program, very heavily invested in the Scout program. We have our first Eagle Scout 2 weeks ago. He started with us here in 1st grade, went through Cub Scouts, got his Eagle approved 2 weeks ago. So we're very heavily invested. Jennifer's a lead member in the Scout program. All of her siblings are in Scouts. Estella is the new Scoutmaster for the troop here for girls. Hispanic Heritage Month, trainings, as much as you want to get involved. You can stick around and talk to Robin afterwards for other volunteer opportunities. She coordinates citizenship classes for those candidates here that we've identified are ready for that final step to become a citizen. And Robin and her group take them through that process. I have things in the back. The final question was, where do we get our money? From people like you. So all we get are, we depend on donations here. We don't get government contracts. We aren't funded by any government agency. We do get a small government grant for our after-school program still, a couple of foundation grants, but most of our contributions come from the board, major gifts, friends and family, small donations, things like that. Our budget, we have 7 full-time staff, a full after-school program. It's still about $500,000. So I make sure every dollar goes exactly to resolving an issue. No good intentions, we get things done. So investment in what we do really helps to get people in this community up and going and moving to get to that next stage. Woo! All right, so a lot. So we still have time for questions, but we did get some questions, but we still can stick around, I think, for a couple more.
I'm very perplexed by the government and the people who are coming across the border. They're not allowed to work. How do they expect these people to eat? Or to get housing?
They expect us as a community, which we do, to help with that. They expect other family members, which they do. And for some, it's just no different than what they were living in Guatemala or Haiti. It was the same. No one was providing for them there. They had nothing.
I would
So-
think that if you have a family or you have no money and you want to eat, you might go out and kill somebody, or I don't really mean kill them, but I mean robbery, you know what I mean?
No, I don't know anyone that would see that.
Food banks, send it to the hall.
But again, in those countries they're coming from, there's no help. There's no safety net. There's no social service. There's no end of the year payback from an IRS return. There's no help. There's no services. You're on your own. You either find it or you suffer. So they're very good at just being able to survive. And that's a terrible thing to say, but they're survivors. They're going to survive. We can throw everything at them, and we do. And you know what? They're going to withstand it, and they're going to power through it. That's what we see. The more we can help them get through that, obviously it's better for everyone, themselves and the community, the faster we get them through not having a work hard, not being able to provide for themselves. So yeah, the more we can get that done, usually it takes someone like me or an attorney that charges $5,000 to make that happen.
Just say one quick question. How did they get here? If they have no money and no means, how did they get here?
Each story is different. So like Hector had a lot of land given by his dad. He took a loan out from a bank, a high interest loan to get the money to pay a coyote. So it's all business. You pay someone and that person will get you up to the border.
And I guess I'm saying, if they didn't have any money to begin with.
You scrape the bottom of every pan, you clean every hotel room you can, you save every dollar, you get that money.
It's
Are
safe for
you
years.
talking about from the border to Eastern Shore?
Yeah, how did they finish?
You scrape it together as much as you can, penny by penny, and you get it done. You don't have any other choice. You have to work towards that goal. So it's tough. It's not easy, believe me. It's not. And no story I've heard is an easy story. It's all just a lot to take in.
Sounds impossible.
But it's not, because they're here. It's such a blessing that they have that story. And for me to be a part of that now, that story, again, I just feel so blessed because it's so foreign to me. Knowing that I had to see it because my experience, my life experience, no, very different.
Now, from people coming across the border up here to go, okay, try to get to the Eastern Shore because there's opportunities?
Yep. So cell phones came into place 2008 in most of the countries. If you go to Guatemala or Haiti, I don't think you'll find a single human being without a cell phone. I remember in 2012, one of my last treks to the most remote, highest Mayan ruin in the jungle. I'm up there with a group of students. My phone rings, it's my mom calling. In the most remote part of Central America, I got cell coverage because I was on the highest temple in the middle of the jungle.
How do you charge your phone?
Huh?
How do you charge it?
Oh, I had a good phone. The battery lasted like 3 or 4 days. And I didn't use it much in the jungle. So again, communication is much easier than it was 100 years ago. If you want to find somebody or something, it's just, they're right there in your Facebook. They're right there in your WhatsApp. You can communicate instantly with someone on the Eastern Shore. I talk to people in Guatemala constantly all day for free. It's wonderful. I don't pay a dime for my phone service to Guatemala. It's all through Facebook. It's all free.
Here's a question back here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a statement. One of the things that we don't hear a lot about is in Mexico, if you are part of an indigenous community, you're not a citizen. So you can only go to school to the 2nd grade and then have to pay after. And that's what's driving a lot of the families wanting to come to the States. And you don't hear a lot about it. It's the racism that is involved in Mexico itself,
And Guatemala.
and Guatemala too.
Well, that part of Mexico used to be Guatemala.
Yeah.
There's a history there.
I work with St. Vincent de Paul, and first of all, I wanted to tell you how valuable our communication.
dreamer.
Absolutely. But I think a lecture that you could give at some point on the depths of the culture, we have only tipped, this isn't even tip the iceberg. I mean, it's just, there's so much more. And how the cultures, the subcultures, and when they get here, how they communicate. And someone asked a question about how they do this, right? But they communicate to each other. And so the news goes out. And so they find where their support is. And they get to you, and then their stories are just humbling.
Yep.
That's all I can say is they're just so humbling. And every day, I guess I've ceased being shocked, but I'm still shocked. You know, how, especially a 16-year-old girl who walked here from Guatemala, walked, 16 years old.
Yep.
So her story would be just level you.
But we have people in our office, that's their story too.
Yes,
So we
absolutely.
have people that we're not shocked. We got you.
So my question is, for you, as far as language, what percentage do you feel in your experience of folks that are coming, do they accept going into English learning, situations to learn the language? Or do you feel like they just remain within their culture, within their?
Depends on all those other factors for culture.
I rely on
What's their
kids.
life history with education? Did they go to university in Venezuela? Right? Are they economically well off? Can they take 2 hours a day a break to focus on studying? So there's all these other factors. Do they have 3 children in the house they're trying to take care of? So again, all these different factors would give you an answer on to the probability if they're ready to take that next step for a higher education class or for taking on a new language, which, good Lord. I mean, I don't know how I learned Spanish. I'm just thankful I did because, again, I'm trying to learn Vietnamese now. I just don't know how I could do it. I don't know how it's done. I'm trying again, but it's rough. So it's different for everyone. Knowing our population comes from rural Guatemala, comes from Haiti, probably didn't go to school, right? Probably can't read or write in Spanish. So learning English on top of those factors could come at some point, but probably not right away.
Matt, our Zoom's gonna
All right,
stop
so
in just a couple of minutes.
any questions from Zoom? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.